Hey all, how's it going? So last year I reviewed the Surface Pro X, which was an awesome device but fell short when actually using it as a tablet. It doesn't seem like Windows 10 was really made for a tablet experience, which made me excited about Windows 11 being on the horizon and supposedly being more tailored for a tablet experience. So I decided to install the new beta on my Surface Pro X, and I've been using it for the last week. And I was hoping to walk you guys through what that experience is like. Now, I recorded a video where I spent an hour basically demoing the entire experience from start to finish, but I don't think many people really want to watch that. So instead, I've split it up into 3 different segments of the different experiences, the different parts of the operating system, and I'm hoping to go through those and hoping to share that experience with y'all. Today we're going to be walking through the new Start Screen, Taskbar, and File Explorer apps, which, while still core to the Windows experience, are significantly different from Windows 10. Now, you'll see pretty quickly that I have some big opinions on the experience of Windows 11 so far, and I'm hoping that Microsoft continues to improve it. But for now, let's just get right to the video and I'll walk you through these things. So I've got some beginning apps that I want to try out. Like, you can see that the pinned apps at the beginning are pretty bare. There's not nearly as much kind of bloatware that you'd expect. Maybe these blank apps are going to be some of that bloatware, but we'll have to see that in the future. Now, I would expect, since you can access all apps by going to the right here, that you would be able to swipe over to the left in order to open all apps, but unfortunately that's not the case. There's a pretty small touch target to access all apps. Boxes for other apps to be filled in, yep, those are the bloatware. You could call them bloatware. A lot of these applications are ones that I already use. PixArt, not particular. Uninstall. And then I'm not the biggest fan of Microsoft News, but I know that drives this sidebar experience that we'll get to in a second. So we'll keep that for now. Maybe I unpin that because, yeah, okay. So this long touch delay is a little bit bad. And then Office, I still don't understand why you would need an Office app when you already have Excel, PowerPoints, and Word and so on. So whatever. And then Paint. I don't need it on my home screen. So on first glance, one of my biggest issues with this interface is I typically would have my home screen my start screen take up a larger portion of the display so I could fit more into it. And I wasn't the biggest fan of live tiles, but I liked being able to put a bunch of stuff in this. For me, this is not really any different than an app switcher, right? And in kind of an arbitrary order that you have to customize in order to get to the way you want it to be. And in my mind, I feel like you could probably use a significantly more of this vertical and horizontal space in order to have an app switcher than this. I feel like too often I'd be going over to the all apps, which this looks like it was ported, like obviously carried over through several versions of Windows, but it looks like it was ported directly from Windows Phone. It even has the select a letter to jump between parts of the alphabet, which I guess is fine. It doesn't feel like it's that much more efficient, and generally if I had a keyboard, I would always be searching for this. Now, one thing is, even on iOS, I find myself frequently searching for applications rather than finding wherever I buried them on my home screen or whatever folder I buried them in. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I'm used enough to pressing the search bar and then trying to type it in on a touchscreen relative to just typing it in on a keyboard. Personally, I'm not too bummed out about the disappearance of live tiles, which is saying something considering I was a big fan of Windows Phone, which I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that were big fans of Windows Phone, but I'm sure there are a lot of haters too. What I loved about live tiles on Windows Phone is being able to see a lot of things from the home screen that I would not have to go into applications in order to see. So, for example, any sort of recent tweets, any sort of music that was playing, any sort of emails or messages, all of that stuff was basically easily accessible on the home screen such that I didn't need to go into applications. Now, unfortunately, that dream kind of died, and now it's kind of being picked up by widgets, but widgets are sometimes more actionable, but sometimes not. Whereas live tiles on Windows 10, while they largely had the same functionality with news updates and email and Spotify or whatever you want, Unfortunately, too often they were used more for like advertisements of different things that you could do within apps. So, for example, Spotify would recommend different playlists that I didn't really care about, or the Mail app would tell you, hey, you can use Windows Mail for different things. Add your Gmail to Windows Mail. And the OneNote live tile was one of the biggest offenders of this. There was a live tile, but it didn't show you any sort of valuable information. It would just say, hey, you can take notes with OneNote, which, duh, of course you can. So unfortunately, it didn't ever seem like applications on Windows 10 were really well utilizing the live tiles. And so I'm not frustrated that they're gone. And I also notably didn't spend a lot of time on my home screen on Windows 10, where on my phone, I basically open up to my home screen and then I do something from it. On Windows 10, I am basically always in an application and switching from that application to the next application. So if I was working in Excel, for example, if I wanted to switch to OneNote, instead of going to the home screen and then pressing OneNote, instead I would either type it quickly in the search bar or just press it on the taskbar. So I don't really need to view a home screen that I'm not going to be in for long, whereas I would be on the home screen for longer on my phone. So I was never really a big fan of live tiles on Windows 10, so I'm not sad they're gone, but it doesn't seem like this is a good replacement, frankly. Now, one other thing about the home screen that I unfortunately miss is there's no longer the option to make folders on the home screen like there was with the live tiles home screen from Windows 10 or just about any other operating system's home screen. So you can see I can rearrange these applications, but I cannot put them in folders, which means that you're basically limited on this page to this 6x3 grid, this 18 app grid, and you have no options in order to expand it to however long you want it. Instead, you're going to have to go ahead and add your new applications to different pages, which I would argue is not really that much faster than just finding your application or searching for it in the search bar. I'm a little bit disappointed about this because, frankly, adding things to folders is what I do on most of my mobile phones and tablets in order to basically have more density of applications on the home screen and a little bit more personal organization. I had it on Windows 10 in order to group apps like Office apps, but now that's not an option anymore. I know that a lot of people have been looking at this centered taskbar and saying that they basically got this as inspiration from macOS, but honestly, I don't see it at all. Like, not only visually does it look very, very different, but like functionally, it functions very different than the taskbar in macOS. And I think macOS is just a completely different experience. Now, maybe they did it to be visually similar to macOS, which is a difference from like a copy of macOS, but I don't know if that's the case. In my mind, the driver was more likely that they wanted to basically differentiate the experience from Windows 10 and supposedly make this for tablets, though I don't really believe that. Instead, I think this is basically just, hey, look, Windows 11 is different. Your taskbar is now center. That's it. It's kind of funny now that I think about it because I want to actually orient the taskbar to the left so this looks more conventional for me. I think the taskbar on the left is a better experience because it means that the Windows button is always going to be in the same place rather than offset based on how many applications you have open. That's one of the reasons why I actually prefer, one of the many reasons why I prefer Windows 10. It's small over Mac OS. Because these applications are actually going to move based off of how many applications you have open, which is very odd. Now, I do want to talk about the File Explorer, which actually is one of my biggest frustrating changes. Now, notably, if you look at the File Explorer as an application and compare it to other applications that Microsoft makes, such as OneNote, right? So OneNote still has the ribbon design, even though it's quite a bit shrunk down for this OneNote for Windows 10 application relative to the 2016 version. The same goes for Excel and PowerPoint and Word. You've got this big ribbon on the top. And while it eliminates your actual space that you have, it does give you the option to do a lot of different things. Now, I will admit that most of those things I'm not going to be doing. You can see on OneNote, I'm not going to be recording audio, doing meeting details, mostly equations. None of that stuff I'm going to be doing in OneNote, but I do appreciate having access to that detail. And I'll go ahead and open Excel to show this as well. But when we look at the files application, unfortunately, they've severely shrunk down the ribbons to limit your abilities to do stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my downloads folder. Hopefully I don't have anything. Yeah, I don't really have anything in the downloads folder. So let's go ahead and we'll make a new file. Okay, so here for touch input, I have the option to double click it in order to open it. I have the option to create a new folder or a new item up here instead of the right click that I just did. I can cut it, copy it, paste something. I can change the name, which it's not obvious what this is, but it is changed name. I've seen that before. I can share it or I can trash it. And then in general, I can reorder the list. I can change the view, so extra large icons, for example. And then finally, I can do these things. So compress the zip file, copy path, select all, select none, invert selection, undo creation. This is undo and redo, properties and options. So not a lot of different things that I can do as compared to the massive kind of view that you had, the ribbon before that you had for File Explorer. So for example, like undo and redo were instead options baked into that ribbon. And so they were always accessible. Now, I don't know how many people actually use the undo and redo options rather than maybe keyboard shortcuts, but this is a frustration that I have in mind because maybe Microsoft has that information. Maybe Microsoft has that data on how much usability or actual use these features got. But for me, these features actually mattered because it meant that I could do a lot more on the File Explorer app. So hopefully Microsoft ends up bringing back some of these features in the File Explorer app, and this isn't a problem. But for me, I honestly can't figure out where a lot of these features are now sit, because even long pressing or right pressing a document gives you similar options. Okay, show more options. Okay, so this is basically the file menu. It's kind of bizarre. So this was what used to show up when you right clicked an item. And so it's kind of crazy that that's not now buried under show more options. And so I guess one benefit, and we'll see this once we connect to keyboard, one benefit is this is very supportive of tablet usage, right? This feels like it was made for tablet use. There's a limited number of options. They all fit on the screen and they're all very clickable. But obviously, I'm not going to want to share with Skype. And so if I went and edited my registry on like I did on Windows 10, I can actually remove some of these options that I'm not going to use a lot. Hopefully that's the case in Windows 11 as well. Here's Excel. Just by comparison, you can see the massive amount of options on the top of the screen, and they're all expanded by the ribbon concept. So already you have a large number of options to edit your documents in a very, very, I'll say digestible, but this is tough, right? There's a lot of this stuff that is skeuomorphic, and we'll talk about skeuomorphism in a second, but I like having all this options, and like I feel like after a few years in Excel, you'll know what this does, you'll know what a lot of the insert options do. You'll be at a point where you can readily actually use this. But this is my problem because there was a similar ribbon for File Explorer. Maybe not as quite as robust, but still had your multiple ribbon options of file, home, insert. I can't remember exactly what they all were, but they were all things that I would regularly access. Now you've got basically, again, you have skeuomorphic icons that are pretty limited. Now, I don't know exactly why they limited it to this set of icons. You can see that there's a lot more horizontal space that they could have utilized. Those are relatively accessible icons, but where skeuomorphism actually gets a little bit bad is if the visual design actually gets to a point where I can't actually isolate between the icons what they do, then it becomes more complicated, and really it would be better to have just text telling you exactly what icon each does. I say that after 6 months of trying to learn Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Final Cut Pro, and DaVinci Resolve, which are all use heavily skeuomorphic icons and very, very little text to confirm what you're doing, meaning that for beginning users or for people who don't spend their whole lives in those applications, it's actually very, very difficult to work with. So hopefully Microsoft updates the File Explorer, but for now, this is one of my biggest frustrations, and I can't imagine how other people are going to react.
So how do y'all feel about the new Windows 11 experience so far? Let me know down in the comments what you think about the new Start Screen, Taskbar, and File Explorer. If you like this video, be sure to keep an eye out for the next couple in the series, where we're going to be focusing on the experience of using applications on Windows 11 and the experience of using gesture navigation, which is very different from Windows 10. Let me know down in the comments what you're expecting, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya.